For those of you who don't know, Thomas Piketty is a French economist who's the darling of the socialists. He became famous for his work on inequality, being loved by socialists, but criticized by actually smart people who easily spotted all his methodological errors and cherry-picking. Now, he and his team have unveiled their plan to try to take over the world. Seriously, Pinky and the Brain could do much better. It's basically a Malthusian plan for global economic decline, dressed up as climate justice and equality. Part of the plan is to cap per capita GDP at $69,000, which would already cut the wealth of most Americans by a third. He would also limit annual global economic growth to between 0% and 0.5%. The U.S. would be limited to 0.115%. Our current growth is 1.6%. How that's supposed to help the poor is anybody's guess. He would also force a 3-day work week, reduce construction by 70%, manufacturing by 87%, and punish non-compliant countries with trade sanctions. It also creates a global justice fund financed by taxing all of the things that aren't going to exist anymore. It relies on the vast wealth of countries like the U.S. while suffocating that very wealth, destroying the very assets needed to finance this scheme. It would also greatly impoverish developing countries like in sub-Saharan Africa who need higher growth rates to lift themselves out of poverty. The main part he glosses over is, how is he going to enforce this? There's really only one way: a fascist authoritarian regime with jackbooted thugs seizing the wealth of anyone who dares to better themselves. It would dwarf anything the Nazis or Soviets ever did. And they would be in every workplace, even in every home, telling people when they can work, what they can build, what they can eat, and even regulate their leisure activities. Real socialism has never been tried, they say. From the sounds of it, we should be glad of that. And when they tell you socialist equality isn't like Harrison Bergeron, just point them to this, which is exactly like Harrison Bergeron. The justification for all this is a global climate panic based on the RCP 8.5 scenario, predicting increasing temperatures of 4.8 degrees Celsius, which was a worst-case scenario that even the IPCC officially discarded as implausible. They also retired SSP 5-8.5, which had the same global increase and projected energy emissions based on heavy fossil fuel usage, and SSP 3-7.0 based on high population growth in poorer countries. They were abandoned because fossil fuels, especially coal, aren't growing as much as they assumed. Solar, wind, and hydro have expanded much faster than scenarios predicted. Nuclear power is having a much more positive effect on the environment than they hypothesized. Population projections have come down. And probably most importantly, their scenarios of higher emissions caused by America's exit from the Paris Climate Accords didn't pan out. America's emissions are even lower than what the Accords would have required. A lot of that is probably due to the proliferation of natural gas, which, despite being a carbon-producing fuel, has much lower carbon emissions per unit of power than coal or oil. It's a bit like predicting a Category 5 hurricane will hit New York, and then they get a bit of rain. But don't worry, if the climate scare doesn't pan out, there's his backup plan: inequality. But worldwide income inequality is nearing a 150-year low, and worldwide poverty has been cut in half by almost 2/3 in the last 20 years. But those are just niggling little details to Piketty. The World Inequality Database confirms that most of the inequality is actually in South and East Asia. In other words, the same areas that spend decades trying to manage their economies to eliminate poverty and inequality. That's according to the same World Inequality Database founded by Piketty himself. The main problem is, inequality isn't poverty. Reducing inequality by making everyone poorer is no victory. For the billions of people lagging behind, their way out is economic growth, the kind that can only happen with healthy markets, strong property rights protection, and free trade. As the saying goes, socialism is the belief that it's better to be equal in poverty than unequal in prosperity. That's not a straw man, and Piketty just proved it.